Hello and welcome to the Microsoft Fabric YouTube channel. My name is Mitchell Pearson and today I'm going to be joined by
I'm Nate Hallowell.
Nate Hallowell. If you want to follow along today before we do more introductions and we really dive into the content, this is going to be a workshop. So whether live or recorded, if you want to follow along, there's going to be a couple of things that you're going to need. The first thing is you're going to need a Fabric-enabled workspace. That can be either a paid capacity or it could be a free trial capacity for the purpose of what we're doing today. And then you're also going to want to download the link for the class files. And I see that there's been a little bit of a technical difficulty live today, but when available, they'll be in the chat window, or you can look for those in the description of the YouTube video as well, especially if you are watching the session after the fact. You can go ahead and just check that out in the description of the video. They will be there as well. So once you've downloaded those files, we'll talk about the webinar information here in just a minute. It's odd.
You're a very popular guy today.
That's Microsoft.
Oh.
Oddly enough, that's an odd one. All right, so Nate, what we're going to cover today, let's kind of break this down for everybody. The session is to demystify Microsoft Fabric. And so what I want to do with Microsoft Fabric is we have a lot of users like Nate Hallowell who are experts in Power Apps. They're experts in Power Pages, Dynamics. You've built a lot of Power BI reports. But when it comes to Microsoft Fabric, there's this disconnect and there's this mystification of, I don't want to go and work with that because I'm comfortable with Power BI. But what's interesting about this is that moving from Power BI to moving to Microsoft Fabric is actually very similar, and there's a lot of similarity there. So if we look at the life cycle of Power BI, Nate, if I walk you through that, if I ask you to build a report in Power BI, the first thing you would do is what?
Connect to data.
You would connect to data, and then the next thing you would do is you would go in and you would transform and clean the data, and then you would load the data, you would build some reports, and then you would share those files, like you'd share that with somebody else, right? That's the process.
Right.
When we move to Microsoft Fabric, it's actually the same process.
Okay.
We're going to connect to data. We're going to bring that into Microsoft Fabric. There's a multitude of ways we can do that. We're going to transform and clean the data. Then we're going to build a model. Then we're going to build reports on top of it. And then we share it with our end users. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to walk through that full end-to-end process in Microsoft Fabric.
Well, I'm excited because you said we're going to demystify it a little bit. I am mystified currently.
Yes.
I know nothing about this. So once they come out with the book Fabric for Dummies, I'm the dummy that they're talking about. So I'm glad to be sitting here with you and learning a little bit more about this.
Yes. Hopefully after today you won't need that. So Nate is, full transparency, has not worked in Microsoft Fabric. He's connected from Power Apps, but this is legitimately, he has not worked in it. So what we're going to do today is let's kind of walk through the agenda a little bit. We're going to build a Microsoft Lakehouse. And after we build the Lakehouse, we're going to get data into it. We're then going to build a semantic model after we've transformed and cleaned that data. We're going to build some reports. And if, time permitting, we want to dive into some of the generative AI capabilities that exist within Microsoft Fabric at the very end. So this is a 1-hour webinar session. It's going to be jammed-packed today. It might go a few minutes over 1 hour because we want to get that information in there, but it's going to be exciting.
I'm okay if we have to go over because I really want to see some of that generative AI stuff.
It's really cool stuff. It's really cool stuff. So the files, I see the files are now in the chat window. Make sure that if you're following along, go ahead and jump into the chat, download those class files that Adam just posted so that you can follow along as well. While people are kind of downloading that, let's talk a little bit about what Fabric is. All right, so Microsoft Fabric is a unified platform that brings together a bunch of different tools that we've been using in Azure for a long time, making it easy for our analysts, our engineers, our data scientists to really work together collaboratively. Now, where a lot of people get thrown off, Nate, when they're working in Microsoft Fabric is, how do I get data into Microsoft Fabric? And so the underlying layer of Microsoft Fabric is the OneLake, right? And so we have the Microsoft OneLake. The way that we get data into and out of the OneLake is through, the primary mechanisms there is going to be through your Lakehouse or through a data warehouse.
Okay. I've been hearing the Lakehouse term a lot. Is that like a warehouse? Is it the same thing? What's the difference?
There is some similarity there, especially when it comes to Microsoft Fabric. And so the similarity is that, again, it's like a container that allows us to get the data into and out of OneLake. But where a lot of people struggle with Lakehouse is, should I use the Lakehouse or should I use the data warehouse? And so where we generally point customers that we work with, and we work with a lot of different customers, is we look at the Lakehouse and we say, okay, if I'm working with a lot of semi-structured data or unstructured data and I need to get that data into my OneLake, into Microsoft Fabric, Lakehouses are great for that because we can just upload those files into the Lakehouse. If you're working with very structured data, you can do that both in the Lakehouse and in the data warehouse. So that works in both. The deciding factor for most companies really comes to the skill set within the organization. So if you're working with a bunch of data scientists and engineers that really love working with notebooks and working with PySpark, and they want to delete and edit and update and do a lot of the data transformation with Spark, they're going to lean towards data lakehouses. If you are a SQL shop and you love using stored procedures to clean and transform data, you're going to lean towards the data warehouse.
Okay. So it really just has to do with the type of data and what the teams are comfortable with. Is one technology better than the other? Or?
I would not say one is better than the other. They're very comparable for performance and price. Those really are the deciding factors. And for most companies, as they really mature in their Microsoft Fabric journey, what you generally see is they have a combination of both. They have a combination of both. And because everything is built on the OneLake, when you put data into the OneLake in Microsoft Fabric, what happens is you can access the data from the data warehouse even if you put it in the Lakehouse, and you can access it vice versa. So it's easy to access the data. I can write SQL against the data to get the data. I can write PySpark against the data even if it's in the data warehouse to read it. So the data becomes very accessible regardless of where you put it at, which is one of the huge benefits to putting it in Microsoft Fabric.
Well, I'm excited, man. This is a lot of new terminology for me, so
it is a lot.
Show me what to do. How do I get started?
So let's jump right in and get started. Before we do, the first thing I want to start with is let's create a workspace.
Okay.
We already have a workspace for this demo, but for people that maybe are like, how do I create a workspace? Where do I go? How do I get started? We're going to go to fabric.microsoft.com.
Okay.
So open up a web browser, go to fabric.microsoft.com. That's going to take you into the Microsoft Fabric experience. And then what I want you to do, Nate, is over on the left-hand side of the screen, we're going to click on Workspaces. And down at the very bottom, we're going to click a new workspace. Now, I would bet if we did a poll, the majority of the audience that we have here are coming from a Power BI background. They're probably very familiar with this user experience, but we're gonna walk through it anyway. So if you'll click on that new workspace button right there at the very bottom, we can put a name in here. So if you're following along today, you can put in here just Fabric Live Workshop. We obviously already have our own. And then down at the bottom where you go to Advanced, and scroll down just a little bit here. If you want to follow along, all you have to do is click that trial button right there. And by choosing a Fabric trial capacity, that will allow you, whether live or after the recording has been recorded and stored on the channel, you can follow along with the workshop. The thing to keep in mind here is if that is disabled for you, that means that it's probably disabled at the tenant level within your organization. And so you're just not going to be able to follow along today, but you can talk to somebody in your organization and get them to enable that for you.
Okay, sounds good. Should I click apply or should I cancel this? Because we
can cancel that. Yeah, we already have a workspace. So once we have our workspace created, the one that we're going to use today in ours is going to be the Fabric End-to-End Workshop. If you can go ahead and open that one up. And I have already give you permissions.
And I've already pinned it.
You've already pinned it. Perfect. Good job. All right. So the next thing that I want to do here is, and Adam made a good point here, if you went straight to the powerbi.microsoft.com, that means that you might be in the Power BI experience and a few of these things are going to be in different locations. So Nate, let's point out what Adam said in the chat. If you'll go down to the very bottom left, you can switch right there where you see the Fabric button, right there you can switch between the Fabric and the Microsoft Power BI experience. So if you're in Power BI service and you want to get to where we are, instead of going to fabric.microsoft.com, you can switch the experience right there. So thank you, Adam, for pointing that out in the chat. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we're in our workspace, it's Fabric enabled. We want to get started and we want to get data into Microsoft Fabric, and we're going to do that by creating a lakehouse.
How do I do that?
Yes, so up at the very top left, Nate, there is an option right there for creating a new item. If you want to create any item in Fabric, this is where you go. This is where you go. So new item, And then right here, this is going to open up a list of all the items that we can create in Fabric. And the best way to find this a lot of times is just to search in the top right corner. So if you go up there, yes, right there, go ahead and search for Lake House. And then pause for just a moment. All right, for everybody else. And so this is going to be the lake house. If you will click on the lake house right there, what that does is it's going to launch a new screen that simply says, you're creating a lake house, what do you want to name it? And so what we'll name this one is, we'll go with LH, so just LH underscore, and then let's call it Fabricam data or Fabricam, yeah, something like that. And hopefully that's available. There we go. So we're going to just name it, hold on for a moment for the people that are following along at home. And so we're just going to name this our Lakehouse Fabricam Data Lakehouse. And then it's going to put it here. Now the other thing I want to do is I actually want you to go ahead and enable Lakehouse schemas down there at the bottom. This is a really awesome feature that you'll see in a minute. Allows us to organize our data a lot better in a single lakehouse instead of having to create multiple different lakehouses for different layers.
Nice. Okay, cool.
All right, so I think we're good. Go ahead and click Create.
Now, what's the naming convention there? You did LH underscore for lake house. Do you typically do a prefix like that on everything you make inside of here?
I do personally, yes. I will do that. You'll see us do that for data flows in a moment. For notebooks, I'll do that. It makes it really easy to identify items within the workspace, especially if I'm not switching, and filtering down the workspace for specific items.
Okay.
So not necessary, but I think it's good for all organizations to come up with a good naming convention so that it's easy to find those different items. So this right here, Nate, this is our lake house. If you want to kind of zoom in right there on that Explorer for everybody. And you'll notice that right now we have the lake house, we have tables, we have the DBO schema, and we have files, but nothing is in this lake house. And so the first question that we always get asked is, how do I get data into the lake house? And the easiest way to get data into the lake house is actually to connect to data that you already have available. And so we have data in Data Lake, we have data in an Amazon Web Services storage account, we have data in Dataverse. We can simply connect to that data that's there, making it available in Microsoft Fabric without having to load the data and go through an entire ETL process.
Okay, cool.
So I'm going to show you how to do that real quick. Before we do that, we're going to create two schemas for what we're doing in the workshop today. We're going to create a bronze schema and we're going to create a silver schema. So if you'll hover over tables, just hover right over tables right there, and then click on that three dot, also known as an ellipsis, and then click New Schema for me. And we're going to do all lowercase. We're going to name this one our bronze schema, so just BRONZE.
Do I put the word schema in there?
No, just bronze, I'm sorry. Good question, good question.
And then
All right.
create?
And then create. And then we're going to build one more here, if you will, and let's go ahead and change that and create that with a silver schema. And then go ahead and click Create on that as well.
So, forgive me, I'm totally new to this whole data world.
Absolutely.
What is this bronze and silver? Is there a gold? And what is all that?
Yeah, so great question. So one of the terms you'll hear a lot when we're talking about data specifically, especially in Fabric, and I'm going to demystify this for you real quick, is this idea around the medallion architecture. And what is that? So this is not something that's new in data and analytics, especially in the enterprise business intelligence world, right? What we do is the bronze layer is kind of that raw layer. This is the original state of the data, the original names, everything the way that it was from the source. And so what we'll typically do is go to all those different locations where the data exists and we'll load it into the bronze layer. So that's the raw data. Typically, most organizations do not make that available to people within the organization. It's just a lift and shift to get it into Microsoft Fabric.
Okay.
The silver layer is when we first, so let's kind of walk through this. So normally medallion architecture is like bronze, silver, and gold. The silver layer is where we take the data that's in the bronze layer, we move it to the silver layer, we start changing some table names, some column names, we do some basic cleaning up and making it ready for users to be able to access that data so that it's in a prepared state. So that's the silver layer, and it's where we're not doing a full-blown BI project, which can take a lot of time and effort. But if you have 1,000 tables, you can move those over pretty quickly by just renaming things and changing, the data types and fixing some stuff. The gold layer, and this can change. This is different for everybody. This is the very high level, less than a minute explanation here. So please take that with, some forgiveness, if you will. The gold layer is where, for a lot of our customers, we start building out like a data warehouse, facts and dimension tables. And the thing is, not everything in the bronze layer and silver layer makes it into that data warehouse. It just doesn't. There's so much work that goes into that. But we can make that silver layer available to the Power Analysts, to your Power BI users, to AI, to data agents that we build, so that it's available to the organization, and then we build a better curated version on top of it with a dimensional warehouse.
Okay, that makes sense. So I'm just trying to relate it to some stuff that I do, and it's kind of like a dev, test, and prod environment, sort of, but not really.
Not really, but yes, I like it though. It's a good analogy. Okay, so with that, the next thing that we want to do, we'll flip back to the screen here, is we're going to actually create a shortcut to bring data into your bronze layer from a data lake account that we have. So before we get to that, in the class files that everybody downloaded, if you'll pull that up real quick, we actually have a Word document that comes along with what we're doing today. And I think you might have the Word document already open, but if you go in there, there's a Word document here, and that Word document is called what? I can't see it on your screen specifically.
Microsoft Fabric YouTube Fabric End-to-End.
There you go. So if we open that up, right there at the beginning, yeah, there you go. So Microsoft Workshop, and then right there at the beginning it says Azure Data Lake Gen 2 credentials. We're going to be using these credentials to connect to data that's already in Azure, but it's in a different location. It's not in our Fabric environment. It's not in our OneLake. But it prevents us and saves us from having to go and load the data from scratch and load it again, right? So it saves us a ton of development effort by just being able to create a shortcut. So go ahead and copy out that URL real quick from that Word document. Perfect. And then if you'll go back over to Microsoft Fabric, what I want you to do is on the bronze schema, if you'll hover over the bronze schema and click the 3 dots right there and just pause for a moment, we're going to create a table shortcut. All right. And we're actually going to create multiple table shortcuts here. So go ahead and click on that button for me. And so for everybody following along at home, when you click on this, it's going to give you a few different options. And so this tells us what we can create shortcuts to. And you'll notice Amazon S3, Dataverse, Azure Data Lake Store, Azure Blob Storage, OneDrive, a lot of great options, including SharePoint here. So if the data lives there, we can actually connect directly to the data where it is without having to load the data again. This is an awesome feature that really accelerates the development effort for people moving into Fabric.
So it's not actually bringing the data in, it's just kind of like a pointer that's pointing to where it exists now?
Exactly, okay. Exactly correct. Just a shortcut to the data, which is amazing. All right, so what we're going to do is click on Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. So we're clicking on Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 here, and we are going to create a new connection. All right, so we're going to create a new connection. And what it's going to ask you for is right there at the beginning, that URL that you copied a moment ago, Nate, it's going to ask you for that. So go ahead and paste that in right there. That's perfect. And then down at the bottom, it's asking you what kind of authentication you want to use. We're actually going to use... Is that good? It looked like you changed something there.
Oh, no.
Okay, checking it out.
Yep.
If you'll change the authentication token right or kind at the bottom right there to SAS token or SAS token. Shared access signature, perfect. And then back in the Microsoft Word document, we're going to copy everything underneath ADLS SAS token. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. That's
start from the end and go back towards the beginning. Ooh, it's including that. All right.
Oh, man, that's not good. Who did this document? Just hit enter right there. Move that.
I'm going to copy it to my handy dandy notepad because that's my favorite thing to do. Oh, it didn't include the other stuff. All right.
That's why we do it live. That's why we do it live, Nate. All right, go ahead and put that right there in the SAS token. And then once that's in there, we'll pause for a moment for everybody at home. Once that's in there, it's going to use those credentials, which gives everybody who's following along full read permissions to access that data. It's going to give us permissions to pull that data in. So go ahead and click Next. And what we're going to do on the next screen here is we're going to choose what tables we actually want to use. So if you will, go ahead and expand that option right there. Oh, that's an odd view that you got there.
Unable to load. Very good chance I just copied and pasted something wrong. Should I go previous and try to connect again?
Go back to it real quick. Yeah, go back to new connect. I want to see if this is happening for everybody. If you'll go down, put in the URL one more time real quick. It should be fine, but it might be that information box that actually is messing it up. And so click Edit Connection, and then paste in the SAS token one more time. And then let me see what that looks like when you paste it in. Yeah, that matches mine perfectly. That looks good. What's it say? Go back to it one more time. Yeah, go to the very beginning of that on your other screen. Yeah, that looks good. That's exactly what I got. All right, try it one more time. Oh, I see in the chat window, same thing is happening. That's not good. Hold on a second. Let me check my screen, see if I can pull up Fabric on mine.
Proof that we're live.
We're definitely live right now. That shouldn't have happened though. So if I can get this to work, I'll drop mine into the chat window myself. Just 1 second. I'm going to edit my connection. And then click Next. Ah, mine worked perfectly. Okay. So, unfortunately, I'm going to have to put a different link here into the chat window for everybody. And I don't know if it's the SAS token that messed up because of that little tooltip bar that we put in there, because I did test and validate it beforehand, or if it was something else. So let's see if I can put this in the chat window. Apologies to everybody here. This is going to be the URL to that storage account. I just put that in the chat window. How do I get that over to you? Let me see, Nate. I'm going to have to tell you that in Teams. So you might have Teams turned off. And then I'm going to give you the SAS token as well. So I put both the URL to the storage account and the SAS token. I put both of those in the chat window there. I saw the question mark on the beginning of his token. Was it cut off? I thought I saw that. I had you look at it.
There.
It was there. Yeah.
All right, so I've got the URL. Do you have the new SAS token?
I put it, oh, I got to send that to you individually. I'm sorry. There you go. I think it was that tooltip box I put there. I think it messed something up.
All right, let's give this a go.
All right. So we're going to go back. We're going previous. New connection. When you put it in, it's going to make you edit it, unfortunately. So put that in, edit connection, and then go ahead and put in that SAS token again. And that's the one I just gave you, the new one?
That is.
All right, let's click Next. Click on the link on the right there. It's a very odd view that you're getting, unable to load. All right, let's hold on 1 second here, and we're going to flip to my screen in just a moment. And then I'll have to get it in for you. But I need to get into the same workspace that you're in for just a moment to get this going. All right, so if you'll flip over to my screen here, and then I'm going to create a new table shortcut. I'm going to go with Azure Data Lake Store, new connection. And then let me see, I think I have a link here that I can use. So this is where I'm pulling from. I'm pulling from a kind of the original document I had. And I'm going to put that in right there. I will click Edit Connection. I'm going to put in the SAS token right there. So it's actually giving me the same document that you had there, Nate, or the same connection. So we'll see in just a moment if mine overrides it, and then we'll click next. I don't understand. That's exactly what I just gave you. Is it, flip off of my screen for just a quick moment for me, and let me check the chat, see if this is the same issue for everybody else here, or if it worked with the new credentials. Yeah, it looks like it's still the same issue for everybody. That would be very unfortunate. So give me 1 second here. Go ahead and flip back to, 1 second. I'm trying to find my fabric. There we go. Flip back to my screen. All right. So what we can do here on our end is I can get this set up and then you can take back over. Unfortunately, something is odd going on there because exactly what I just shared with you, I copied out of the Word document and it worked for me in your exact same connection there. So that might mean that if you're following along, unfortunately, we'll have to stop it right there and then we'll have to fix those credentials and figure that part out. But from my view, it looks like I have the same exact credentials. So what we should see is this view right here, Nate. And then I was going to have you pull in just a few of these tables right here. So I'm going to pull in application cities, countries, provinces. We're also going to bring in the date dim, the sales customer, invoice lines, and then invoices. There are some other tables there. If we were truly pulling everything in, we could just grab everything. Again, it's not loading the data. It's just going to create a connection and a pointer to that data specifically. Once we get to that point right there, we can click next. And then it brings us to this screen right here where we can validate. Now, we could click on the edit button right here. And by clicking on that edit button, that will allow us to rename those tables. However, I like to keep the table names when I'm moving it into the bronze layer. I like to keep those table names exactly the way that they came from the source so that there's a better lineage for me. It's easier for me to track back exactly where did those tables come from. Because if I rename the tables and then there were similarly named tables or views from the source, then it's kind of hard to quickly identify where did that table come from specifically.
That makes sense. Once you move from bronze to silver and you rename those names, is there a good indicator of like which table that came from the bronze layer?
Well, that's where we would go back and look at our ETL process, but there is within Fabric, that's a great question, there is a lineage view that does give us that.
Okay.
That's
nice.
really good, yeah. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and click create here, Nate. And then, all right, let's see what it's doing now. I wonder if it's because so many people are trying to connect to it at the same time here. I'm going to do it one more time. Good thing I have this completed if we're absolutely desperate. I think this should work on the next attempt. Let's try it one more time here. All right, we'll edit connection one more time. Put in that SAS token and click next. Then let's go through it one more time. So Delta Parquet, applications, same exact ones that we grabbed before. And then we'll click next, give that just a moment and click create. And again, it failed. All right. Somebody in the chat said that there's an extra space at the end. That could be it shouldn't have shown up though, right? So that's a good point, but it shouldn't have shown up and pulled everything up. So we'll try it one more time.
There's no extra space in when I copied it over to Notepad, so.
Let's do one more here. No space there, so that part's good. Edit connection. We're going to try the SAS token one more time, but without the space. Desperate times, we'll try it without the space. and then we'll do next. Should pull up that same view that we had before again. There we go. And again, we're going to go into the Delta Parquet format, fiscal year 2025, and pull in just a couple of tables there. All right, and when I'll click next again. Again, we're not going to rename these, and this time, are you crossing your fingers? Did you?
I did. Well,
you got to cross them.
Was I
Cross
supposed
your
to?
fingers? Yeah, do that. There we go. All right. Now we're going to click create, and it failed again. So it's definitely not the space. And we just did this demo this morning. Everything is exactly the same as it was this morning. So what we're going to do is we're going to pivot to the completed version and see if that works for us.
Sounds like a plan.
We'll have to build it off the completed.
The magic of TV.
Something else is going on there. I'm going to be fully transparent. I actually did get that exact same error this morning when I went through it. And when I went through it again, it did work. So there is something going on there, but I did not expect that. I just assumed that I had made some kind of mistake. And I went through it again. So if we are still on my screen, I actually do have another workspace here. And it is our Microsoft completed version. And we're going to start from this, and then we'll have to work from this one. And I might pivot to you here in just a moment, Nate. So what we were doing, if I pull up my lake house here for just a moment, and I'm going to open up my bronze layer and see if the connection here is actually still valid, because the connection here should work and should be valid. But what I did is I pulled in the data into my lake house right here. So it's very similarly named to what you had, and then I have all of these different tables right here that I've brought in, and all of those were pulled in from that shortcut. So those are the exact same tables that we were trying to pull in just a moment ago, which you see is now loading and loading correctly right there. And so once I got the data into the bronze layer, the next step was to go ahead and use a data flow to clean that data up and transform it and get it into the silver layer. And so I have in our silver layer here a few tables, and what we'll do, and it's just unfortunate for the students at home, we'll have to make sure we validate that connection and figure out what's going on. But what we'll have you do is you should have access to this one. Are you able to get there?
Is this the Microsoft Live workshop completed?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm in there.
All right. So I'll drive for now, and then I'll just have you ask questions if you have any questions as you go along.
Okay.
So we don't need to pivot. So what we'll do is I'm going to go back and in my workspace, so if we go back right here to, let's see, fabric end to end, is this the completed? All right, so I'm going to close that one for confusion's sake, and I'm going to go back here. So if I go back to the workspace right here, remember this is where we can go to create a new item. And so I can create a new item right there. And when I create a new item, what I want to do is I want to create a data flow Gen 2. So when I asked you at the beginning, when you're going through the Power BI lifecycle, right, the first thing you want to do is connect to data. So let's assume that you correctly were able to connect to that data through shortcuts, which we were not. The next step would be to actually clean, transform, and curate that data. So you would do that in Power BI using what tool?
The Power Query Editor.
The Power Query Editor. So the data flow Gen 2 that you see right here in Microsoft Fabric is the exact same technology as the Power Query Editor.
Oh, that's what that is?
That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
Graphical user interface that walks you through and helps you to clean and transform the data. So if I click on Data Flow Gen 2, and I'm actually going to go just a slight bit faster here because unfortunately, from what I could tell in the chat window when I was watching it, it seems that everybody had the exact same issue that we did, so nobody's following along at this moment. And I'm going to create a data flow that's going to load the geography data. So I'm going to call this geography, silver geography, and then I'm going to put a 2 on the end. I'm also going to go ahead and enable the Git integration here. So this is the newer version of Dataflow Gen 2 that works better with deployment pipelines and that. And then we'll go ahead and click Create. Once I name it and click Create, Nate, you're going to notice right out of the box that we have a very similar experience here.
Oh, that is the Power Query Editor.
It looks very, yes, looks like Power BI Desktop here. I can click Get Data right there at the top. And so right here at the top, I can click on Get Data, and then I can go to More, and I can see all the different options that are available. Now, what we can do here is we can actually just click right here in the middle of the screen and say Get Data from another source. And when I click on Get Data from another source, that's going to bring me here. And you'll notice down here at the bottom, I have right here my different workspaces and lake houses that exist within Microsoft Fabric.
Oh, so you can connect a data flow in this workspace to a lakehouse in a different workspace?
Absolutely, absolutely, yep.
That's really cool.
You can even shortcut data from other lakehouses into this into this workspace as well. So into this lakehouse. If somebody else has cleaned up and curated data in their lakehouse, and I want to get it into mine, but I don't want to go through all that work again, I can create a shortcut to that lakehouse and have it available in my lakehouse.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, do the licenses have to be the same across those workspaces to be able to?
They do not. So you do have to have a Fabric capacity. Effectively, both at that point would both be Fabric-enabled workspaces, so both would have to have a Fabric capacity, but they could be sharing the same Fabric capacity. So you can have a Fabric capacity across workspaces.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my lakehouse right here where that data resides, and it's going to automatically create a connection using my organizational account. I'll go ahead and click on Connect. And once I connect to that data, it's going to give me an option of what tables do I want to grab from the data that we brought in. And so for this example here, we're doing geography. So I'm going to grab city, country, and state province, because what we're going to do as part of cleaning up this data is we're going to combine those three tables together and have one geography table. So just like you would do in the Power Query Editor. Once I've gotten all three of those tables, I'll go ahead and click on Create.
Well, that's happening. What makes this Gen 2 versus Gen 1? What's the difference?
Gen 1 was quite a bit different, and it's what we had. And it's a longer question, and we're not going to have time now to answer that, but it's a good question. That's what we had prior to Microsoft Fabric in Power BI service that people would use to clean and curate their data instead of Power Query, and then it would load it into like a data lake in the background.
Gotcha.
This gives us quite a bit more flexibility and versatility, as you'll see here in just a moment. So what I'm going to do is choose my countries table, which is the highest level of my hierarchy. And I'm going to take that table and I'm going to join it to my state, and then I'm going to join it to my city and get everything into one table here. So with the countries table selected, and this should look very familiar to everybody on the call, I'm going to come over here to the right and click Combine. And then I'm going to go with Merge Queries right there. And it's going to pull this up right here. And so I'm going to say I want to take the countries and I want to join it to my state provinces table. And we're going to join those on country ID. So we'll do that right there. Now there is a little bit of cleaning I need to do on the country table, which I'll do here in just a moment. So you'll notice at the bottom it said we only got 1 out of 190 rows matching. That's because the state table and the city table does not have anything other than United States. So any country outside of the United States does not get a match. So what I actually want to do is I'm going to filter this down right here. I forgot this part. But I'm going to filter this down to the United States. So I'll come over here, grab United States, and then
Like
I'll load
US.
more. It actually is United States, but I needed to click the load more at the very bottom there. And then I'll filter that down.
Pro tip.
So it'll get us to that one row. There we go. All right, so with that filtered down, what I'll do is come all the way over to the right and click on that expand button. And then I'm going to tell it what columns I want to bring back from the state table. So I don't want to bring back all the columns there. I just want to bring back a few. So I'll bring back the state province ID, the code, the name, the sales territory, and that is all I'm going to bring back from that table. So just those 4 columns. And we'll click OK. And so far, this should look very similar to the experience that you've experienced before in Power BI desktop within the Power Query, right? You bring some data in, you need to combine that data. So I've taken the data here and I've combined it to the states. The next thing I need to add is I now need to add in the cities data. So I'll go back over to my countries. I'm going to click Combine one more time, and I'm going to merge queries again. But this time I'm going to connect to cities. And then we'll click OK. And then we need to choose what we want to join on. So I'm going to scroll all the way over to the right. We're going to be joining on State Province ID, and then we'll join on State Province ID right here. Left outer join is perfect, and then we'll go ahead and click OK. You'll see we got, at the bottom it said we had 53 out of 53 matches, so that's a good sign. It means every single province or state or US territory found a match. And then of course we get this view again where we can click the expand button and say, these are the columns that we want from that matching table. So we'll click on that expand button right there.
This is the same experience as inside of Dataverse as well with data flows. So
So very familiar to you.
Very familiar.
All right, so we're going to grab our city ID, our city name. We do not need the state province ID or the location here. So those are the only two columns that I need to pull back from the city table, and click OK. Now the last thing that we would do here, Nate, is I want to name my query appropriately. So I'll call this one just geography. And unfortunately, because I already have these in my Silver schema, I'm going to have to give this a name that's a little bit different. So I'll just put a 2 on the end. Not a best practice to necessarily use numerical values. And then the other thing is we could go through and we could actually rename these columns appropriately or change any data types just like you would in Power Query. So you could click the drop down here. If I want to rename country to just country from country name, I can double click on that and then change that to just country.
Perfect. And you can do all your measures and like extra columns and all that stuff here too.
So extra columns, yes, we're not at the phase where we would add measures yet. That's actually something that we'll do in the semantic model here in just a few moments.
Perfect.
All right. So I am going to go over to the data destination right here. And right here at the very bottom, this is a big difference from what we have with Data Flow Gen 1. I can come over here and I can choose the destination where I want to load it. And the big difference between this and Power BI is that when I load it into the Lakehouse, it now becomes available to everybody to connect directly to that. Whereas when you did this in Power BI Desktop, you would hit close and apply, and it loads it just into that Power BI Desktop file, right? So it's not really easily accessible to pull out to use in other locations. You can't just write SQL queries against it because it's contained within that PBIX file. So we're going to choose Lakehouse, and it automatically connected for me. Now something I do have to do because we're using schemas is I have to click Advanced Options here, and then I'll have to pull down the drop-down menu and click True, and then I'll click Next. And I'm going to leave the name as Geography 2 here, but I do need to go down and find the, actually I probably could just put this in our Fabric end-to-end. I'll just put it in the one that we're in. Keep it simple here. I'm going to put this in the completed example right here. I'll choose my Lakehouse that already exists, and then I'm going to choose my Silver layer by just clicking on the schema, and then I'll click Next. Once I do that, and I validate all of the settings and all the data types and what I have right here, I click Save Settings. I'm pretty much done except for one final step. And the final step here is I'll come up to the top and say I want to save it, I want to run it, and I want to close out of this Data Flow Gen 2.
So that will basically populate the data in that Lakehouse.
It will. It's going to take a moment, but it's going to go through all of the transformational steps that we have, and once it's done, it'll load it into the Lakehouse, and we'll see that data right there in the Lakehouse, and now we have data in the Silver layer within our data Lakehouse.
That's pretty awesome.
It is.
I saw
pretty
some other
cool.
like data destinations too. I saw SharePoint was on there. I saw a bunch of different options.
Yeah, there's only a handful. There's not a lot. There's not as many options for destination as you get for data sources, but I would expect Microsoft to probably add a few more as time goes on as well. All right, so let's do save, run, and close to go ahead and run that. And then we're actually going to do one more data flow real quick to get our invoice data and our customer data in. And then we're going to pivot and take a look at notebooks as well.
Awesome. I'm excited about that.
The notebook, have you ever built a notebook?
No, but I've seen it happen and it looks really fun.
All right, so we will do that here in just a moment. All right, so the next thing I want to do is if I go back into my, let's see, wrong, here we go, right here. Back into my workspace, I'm going to create another Data Flow Gen 2. And so you'll see this one is currently running. So we'll give that time to cook, if you will. All right, and I'm going to go New Item, and I'm going to do another Data Flow Gen 2 here.
So you're taking all the data from the bronze layer, which is, like you said, could be thousands of tables, and you're combining them, and you're kind of creating like a simplified version of it in the silver layer, where everything's kind of combined and transformed. I kind of get it now. Sorry, I'm talking out loud. I know that was a dumb statement to make, but it's making sense.
It's good. And as we said before, Nate truly is brand new to Microsoft Fabric. So these are good questions that people in the audience, I'm sure, are asking as well. So I'm going to go ahead and say get data from another source. Just like before, Nate, we are going to connect to the Lakehouse that we've been using here. And I'm going to hover over it just to make sure that this is my completed demo here. All right. And this time I'm going to bring in a couple more rows. So I'm going to bring in the date dim. I'll bring in the customers, the invoices, and the invoice line items. And then I'm going to go ahead and create. So just for the recording after the fact, when people go back through this, these are the 4 tables that we're bringing in for this data flow. All right. So we'll click create. Now, you didn't ask this question, but you might have been thinking, you know, when I'm building a data flow, do I do it only for one table that I'm creating, or can I do it for multiple? And the answer there, you really can go different ways, right? And so in this one, you're going to notice that I just want to take this date table and customer table. I'm not really going to do any data cleansing or transformation. It came from the source. It was very clean. I'm just going to move it straight to the silver layer, rename the table name, and I'm going to load it straight into the silver layer the way that it is. So for the date table, I'll come over here and I'm going to call this one date 2, because of course I'm in my completed example that was named just date, so it already exists. And then I can come over to my sales customer table, and I'm going to go ahead and name that one customers, and I'll put a 2 on the end of that one as well.
Do you have to choose the data destination for each table that you want to move?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
So for each one, I'll have to choose the data destination, and then I'll have to actually point it to the lakehouse or warehouse or wherever it is I want to put that data. All right, so we got those 2 done. Now the other one is not going to be quite as simple. What I want to do is take my invoices, and I want to combine the invoices with the actual invoice line items. So what I'm going to do there is choose my invoices table. We're going to go up here to the top. I'm going to go through the exact same steps that I did before by clicking on Merge Queries. And from the right table here, I'm going to go ahead and grab invoice lines, and I'm going to join these 2 on invoice ID. So that's the column that we would do the lookup on. That's the column that we would do the join on here. Left outer join is perfect, and then we'll go ahead and click on OK. All right, and just like before, you're going to notice that we get this expand button here where we can say these are the columns that we want from the line items table that we want to add into our invoices table. So we'll click on that. And then I'm going to uncheck here, and I'm going to take the invoice line ID. I'll take the stock item ID, the quantity, the package type ID probably, and then unit price, tax rate, tax amount, line profit, all of those right there. So just to slow it down, invoice line ID, stock item ID, and then package type ID, quantity, unit price, tax rate, amount, and line profit is going to be perfect. And then we'll click OK. Now, a moment ago, you actually asked, you said, is this where we would create any kind of this is where we can start to curate the data a little bit and actually improve upon it and get it ready for the silver layer? So you might have noticed in there, we don't really have a line total. So if I want to get the amount of the invoice right now, I would have to multiply in my calculated measure later on the quantity times the unit price. But to simplify the model, what I can actually do is inside of the data flow gen 2, I can go to add column at the top and tell it I want to create a custom column. And I can create the line total right here in. And again, this is just like Power Query Editor and Power BI Desktop. So line total, and then right here, I'm going to go ahead and grab the quantity. By double clicking on it, I'm going to do a multiplication sign, and then I'm going to grab the unit price as well. And I'm just going to multiply those 2 times one another. And then I'll click OK. And there we go. Now, I also need to go ahead and update the data type, so I'm going to make that a decimal. And just like Power Query Editor, I can click right there on the data type and choose decimal number.
Like you said before, it's all the same process and a lot of the same technologies, just different words, different terminology.
For people that I've gone, that when we're doing training or we're working with customers on different consulting engagements and we walk them through this process, it's funny how fast they go from being somewhat intimidated by it to feeling very comfortable working in this space. And that's really what we wanted to show today is how I'm going to get data into the lakehouse. I now want to clean and transform that data, put it into the silver layer, and then how do I build a semantic model on top of it, which will be, here in just a few moments, we'll be able to get there and do that.
And that's so many words that I'd never heard, so I'm so intimidated by it. But seeing it here today has been so helpful because It makes you realize like it really is super easy. So thank you for showing me.
100%. So I'm going to rename this one Invoices 2. Again, very terrible name, but it's because I'm in a completed example where I unfortunately already have these tables created. So we're just going to make sure we know exactly which ones they are that we just created for our semantic model here in a little bit. And then I do have to go through now and I have to create a destination for 3 different tables: the date, the customers, and the invoices. So we'll start with invoices first, and we're going to choose Lake House. And then remember, because we're using schemas, I do have to turn this on right here. So I'm going to say navigate using the full hierarchy and then click next. I'm going to leave the name the same, and then I'm going to load this into my Microsoft Live Workshop completed, my Lake House, and I'm going to load this into the silver schema right there and click next. And what I'll do here, Nate, is I'm going to do all 3 tables, and then once all 3 tables are mapped to the destination, we're then going to do what we did before. We're going to close it, we're going to run it, and we're going to let it load all of that data into our Lake House. So I'm going to do the same thing for the date table here by click the date table over here on the left, and then we'll go down to the bottom right and click data destination, and I'm going to choose Lake House right there. Perfect. And remember, I forget this step sometimes, and when you forget this step, it can be a little bit frustrating. It's required if you're using schemas. I need to make sure that I choose right there that I'm using the full hierarchy, so I'll do true. And then I'm going to click next right there.
If you don't, what happens? Will it fail? Will it not let you select the...
It won't let you select the schema. I've done it before and it'll fail, and it'll just put it in the default DBO schema.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, so we'll choose our completed example again. And then again, I have to go through the process of kind of choosing the silver layer, click next, and then we're going to do it one last time here. Again, we didn't spend any time cleaning up anything in the customers table or the date table, but this is that stage because it's moving from bronze to silver, where any basic data cleansing operations we would do it here. So we would rename those columns, we would rename the tables, we would go in and merge columns together if we need to, merge them with other tables to create maybe one customer table instead of 3 coming from 3 different tables. We would do all of that here at that point. But this was a pretty straight kind of lift and shift from one layer to the next. And then again, a little bit redundant here, but this is exactly what you asked a moment ago. Do you have to go through all 3? And the answer is yes. All right. So with that being done, you can notice right here the 3 that are being loaded are italicized. This one's not going anywhere, and then that one right there. So now we're going to go ahead and go back to the home ribbon. We'll do save and run, and then we're going to do save, run, and close. Any other questions?
Once you run it, how long does it take to load the data in there? Is it depending on how complicated the transformation was?
It's going to depend on where the data is coming from, right? So if you're connecting to a source that's going to be bringing the data like a shortcut to a very slow source, then that could affect it from a performance perspective. But generally, it is pretty fast. Generally, it's going to be pretty fast. But yes, the source of where the data is coming from, how much data you have, how complicated your transforms are, how many different items you've put into that data flow, all of those things can definitely impact performance.
And like you said, this was a simple example where you have just kind of one data source where it's being pulled from, but you could theoretically, in that Gen 2 data flow, you could bring in different sources from your ERP and your CRM and Excel, and could you do all that transformation in that one data flow right there?
Can you do it in Power Query Editor?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes.
That's
yes,
true.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. All right, so the next thing that I want to do here is what we did in this example is we wanted the attendees to be able to see that I can do the shortcut, sure, take advantage of data that already exists, but I can also upload files and bring my own files. Structured, unstructured data, I can bring that and just add it straight into the one like in my Microsoft Fabric environment. So what I did is just right here, when you hover over files, you get this little ... You can click on that, click upload, and just upload files here. And that's exactly what I did. This stock items.csv file exists in the files that the students downloaded at the beginning of the class, but because of the technical difficulties with the key earlier, we're a little bit behind. So I'm just going to proceed from right here where we currently are. And so the next step of what I want to show here is I want to show how we can transform the data by not just using Power Query. Because a lot of users are coming into this and they're like, look, I want to use notebooks. I want to have more versatility. I want to have more flexibility. There's packages I want to leverage. Notebooks are more my my language. And so we can also use notebooks. Now, if you're not a notebook person, you don't have to use notebooks. That's definitely not a requirement here. But that's what we're going to do, if you will. So I am going to, right here in my lake house, I'm going to come up to the very top and I'm going to tell it I want to open notebook, and I'm going to click on new notebook right there at the top. All right. And so what will happen is it's going to bring in all of the items from my lakehouse. Now this can be very intimidating if you've never worked with PySpark before or never worked in a notebook. But what's really cool is if I click on Files, Nate, I can actually grab that CSV file, drag it over, and just drop it right there into this code cell.
Oh, that's cool.
It's awesome. And as soon as I drop it in, it writes all of the code necessary to load that data into this data frame or this kind of virtual table that I can then work with and I can manipulate. Now there is a couple things I want to do. The first thing here is you can see that it's automatically choosing that the first row is a header. The other thing I want to add in here is I actually want to do option, and I want to do infer schema, and then I want to do true. And so what I'm doing there is I'm just telling PySpark that as it brings that data in, I want it to look at the preview of the data that's coming in, and I want it to infer, is this a string? Is this a whole number? Is this a numerical value? I want it to be able to look at that and decide that for me, so I don't have to go through every single one of those columns and change the data types for each one individually.
Okay.
That makes sense. So I'm going to add that in. Now this part is in the student files. I don't have the student files open. Do I? I do have it open. Even better. Let me open this up. So this part that I'm going through, you guys will see in the student files right here. If you're following along later, you can pull that information up and you can use that. All right. So going back over to the notebook, the next thing I want to do is go ahead and connect this to a standard session. So I'm going to connect this to a Spark cluster. This is the way that we run our PySpark code within notebooks as we connect it to a cluster. We don't have time to go through all of that, obviously. As soon as it's connected, it takes about 5 seconds. I can run it. And what it's going to do is it's going to load it into that data frame, and then I'm going to just display the data so I can preview it and verify that it's coming back correctly as expected here. All right, and there we go. So now we have results. You say, Mitchell, I don't know how to read data, I don't know how to write code, but you saw I was able to just drag it over, write the code, make a small modification so I could get these data types the way I wanted them here. And now I have a preview of the data. In order to proceed though, I want to show you how we can do very, very basic data manipulation, because this is how a lot of people will work with Fabric. They're just going to use notebooks. And so I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of these two columns right here by using a command in PySpark that just drops those columns. All right, so I will hide my output right here, and then I'll come down to the bottom and click code, and I'm going to do df equals, so I'm going to take the data frame, I'm going to overwrite it by saying df.drop, and I'm going to choose those two columns. So it was brand, what was that other one, size? Wait, this is a quiz, I'm not 100% sure though, but I think it was. So I'm going to grab brand, I'm going to grab size. Oh, I meant to display the results. Let's go. Display df. Now keep in mind, technically in a notebook, you wouldn't be displaying it after every time. You would remove those. This is just a way of being able to quickly test and validate our code. But you'll notice that when I do this right here, I write this new code cell and I drop those columns. If I preview the data, those columns no longer exist in the data set. So we've done some data cleansing transformation here. We could combine columns together. We could do a lot of different things in notebooks, but now we have somewhat modified this data set. The final thing that we'll do here is we're going to take that data and we're actually going to load this also into our data lakehouse. And so over here, I'm going to copy out this code right here, which effectively is going to just write that data to the Delta Parquet format and into my Silver schema and into a table.
If someone's never used Fabric code or PySpark or notebooks, what are some good resources that they can start learning this stuff? Because this looks really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Microsoft has a ton of incredibly awesome data and research or information that'll help you with this. And again, in the class files, if you go to the very end of the workshop files that we provided, there is additional resources that you can look at. I would recommend people start with Microsoft Learn documentation. That's definitely the first place to start. And then if you want to get a deeper dive, obviously there's other places where you can get that information as well. All right. So I'm going to write this data right there. I'm going to click on Run, and all I'm doing is saying, take my data frame, write it into the Delta Parquet format. If it exists, overwrite it, and then save it to this table. And this is how I save it to my Silver schema and into my Lakehouse. And this is going to run pretty fast. It ran in about 13 seconds. We've connected to that file, we've cleaned it up, and we've loaded it into our Lakehouse. Now, we're probably about 10 minutes behind schedule. But what I want to do is I do want to build the semantic model, and that's going to be very quick here. So now that we have the data into our Lakehouse, you think back to the conversation that we had for the Power BI user, right? That development life cycle. We connect to the data, we transform it, we curate it, we load it into our model. The next part is like actually building out that semantic model. So we're going to build those relationships there. We can build any kind of DAX that we want to build. Now we have a semantic model that's very similar to what we were doing in Power BI, but it's in Microsoft Fabric at scale, connected to all those AI components, that generative AI, and we can connect that and build reports directly off of that and access it in a couple of different ways, which is really cool.
And share it out to everyone.
And
easily.
Share it out to everyone easily. Yes, and Adam Saxon and those guys are doing a great job on their channel of keeping us up to date with stuff like OneLake security that's now in public preview. And so really excited for that to come along because we can put that on the one. That's another conversation. Let's move on. We don't have time. Why did you bring that up, Nate? All right, so I'm going to go back over to my Lakehouse here. I'll go over here. I'm going to click on the Lakehouse to pull that back up. And in my Silver schema, if I refresh that data, I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tables. So all of those new tables that we built within the data flow and the notebook now exist here. Now pretend like the ones without the 2 don't exist. So we have 5 tables that we've created. What I want to do next is actually build a semantic model on top of this. And so right here at the top, I have this option to create a new semantic model. So I'm going to click on that button right there. I am going to prefix it with SM so I know it's a semantic model. So I'll go ahead and give that a name. It's going to be SM Fabricam Data 2. I don't remember what we called the other one, so I'm just going to throw a 2 on the end. And then I'm going to grab the columns that I want to add to this one. So it's going to be the customer 2, date 2, geography 2, invoice 2, stock items 2. All of these coming from the Silver schema because that's where I'm building my semantic model from. And then I'll click confirm. So pop quiz. Once you load the data, you clean the data in the Power Query Editor. Once you load it into Power BI Desktop, what would you generally do? What would be the first step that you would do once you load that data?
Well, I'm not very good at Power BI, so I might start building the report right away. But
you might start building the report right away, yes. So the first thing we want to do is we want to check and validate the relationships that were built. So a lot of times in Power BI, when you load it, it might build relationships automatically. So a lot of people do exactly what you do. They would go and just start building the report. But we want to actually check the relationships. You'll notice here, though, in my semantic model, it did not build those relationships for me. So the first thing that we'll do is we're going to come in and we're going to build those relationships. And I'm going to go through this part, Nate. I think I'm going to go through this part. I'm going to do 1, and then I'm going to skip over to the completed example because of time. That's what I'm going to do. So we'll do 1, and then we'll skip to the completed example here. So one way you can do this, especially when you have a big audience that might be following along, instead of dragging and dropping, is you can click on Manage Relationships here. And when you click on Manage Relationships, we can just use the UI right here, and I can say, I want to create a new relationship. I'm going to choose Invoices. So everything is going to be pretty much connected to my Invoices table. And then I will go with, let's go with our date table here. And I'm going to tell it that I want to combine or join on the invoice date. So let's find the invoice date. There we go. From the invoice date to the invoice date. Now, because this is not an imported model, you might wonder, where's all the data at? This isn't quite the same as if you imported the data, so you just have to know the data when you're building this relationship. So it's going to be many to one. The date table is the one side. The invoices is the many side. It's active. It's single. I'll click Save. And then what I would generally do is I would do the same thing here for the other 4 tables. So I would relate the geography relates to the customer table on the postal code city ID. The stock items relates to invoices on stock item ID. And then the customer table relates to invoices on the customer to the reseller ID. So I would relate all those together there. And then we close it, and any relationships that we've built, we would be able to see right here in our model.
Perfect.
So if I were to close that model and go back to my workspace and open up the completed version that we have right here, which was called Fabricam Sales, and I click on Open Semantic Model right here at the top. So this is how you would come back in and modify it and change it later. If I click on Open Semantic Model here, this is where we would be able to see that completed version. And just for everybody who might be watching the recording later, what I want to do is I want to just bring this up real quick and freeze on this screen. So this is, if you want to build the rest of those relationships, that's what those relationships would look like.
Perfect.
All right. So maybe one last thing we would do before we started building reports here is we would come and potentially want to build some calculated measures in our semantic model. And you can do that by just, right-clicking on a table, click New Measure, and you can now create calculated measures just like you would over in Power BI Desktop.
Nice. Or if you're me, you wouldn't because you don't know how.
You are a Power Apps guru, that's for sure. All right, so the last thing here we want to cover real quick, and then we're going to hit some AI stuff, and we'll be kind of caught up on time a little bit, is I want to build a report on this, right? And so there's a couple things you can do. One is you can open up Power BI Desktop, and from Power BI Desktop, I can click One Lake Catalog right here and choose Power BI Semantic Models. And when I click on Power BI Semantic Models, it's going to bring up the models that I have access to, and I'll be able to view that data. And so you'll see right here, that is the one that we're using in our live workshop that's completed. This is the new one that I just created that's not quite completed yet. And if I click on that, Nate, it's going to pull up that semantic model with all the tables over here on the right, and I can actually just start building visuals right here.
That's amazing. So as an outsider looking in kind of from the Fabric world, like that's the coolest part of this to me is because it gives people like me the ability to just go into Power BI Desktop and start doing the fun stuff. Like all the data has been prepared for me, and it's much more of a self-service model, I guess.
It really is. And so one of the things that is interesting here is that this solves one of the big problems. Fabric solves one of the big problems that a lot of organizations did have a little bit with Fabric or Power BI, which was having a lot of different people in the organization go in and connect to data and build a lot of different, disparate, separated Power BI reports where a lot of the same data was being loaded again and again and again in different Power BI models, and sometimes cleaned a little bit differently and different logic applied. So now we can build that one semantic model in Microsoft Fabric that has all of our business logic that's been curated, that's been tested and validated in one place. And now when you come in here and want to connect to data, you don't have to wonder if somebody's already built a Power BI report. You know where the semantic model is, you can connect and you can just build the reports.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff. The other thing we can do from a report perspective, just very briefly here, is if I go into my semantic model, I can just click right here at the top under File, Create New Report. And if I click on Create New Report right here, it's going to open up a new tab across the top, and I can immediately come over here and grab something like country. That's going to, let's put that in a table visual right there. Oh, we only have country. That was a terrible example. Let's grab state. We can bring in all of our states. I can go down to the invoices table. I did build a measure here, so I'll pull in total sales, and then I can sort that in descending order. And apparently it's not formatted. And then I can see all of my states by sales. This is the normal Power BI behavior that we're used to seeing just by loading that data in the semantic model, building those active relationships. There we go.
Awesome.
All right, without further ado, we just went through pretty much the entirety of the Power BI lifecycle, but we did it in Microsoft Fabric, except there were some errors with the token. I have literally no idea what was going on with that. By far the most stressful session I've ever done in my life, and I've done a lot of sessions, so
But you handled it gracefully.
I don't think so. I don't know that I did. I appreciate it. So,
well, the whole purpose of the whole thing was to help demystify Fabric and to demystify some of these words, and even not being able to follow along and not being able to do it, it makes so much more sense to me now. Consider it demystified for me, at least.
well, one of one. I like it. So the last thing I want to talk about here is the Copilot experience. I'm going to not save that report. Let's talk very briefly about the standalone Copilot experience in Microsoft, and it goes deeper than this. You can build Fabric data agents. I was just working on an engagement with a customer. We're building data agents for them right now. It's amazing what we can do with that, and it's on top of the data in Microsoft Fabric. What this gives us, and Microsoft has a chat with your data in a day, entire class in a day that you can sign up for that's going to be getting released very, very soon. Working with the vendor now to get those virtual machines set up to dive into this. But what I can do is I can actually come in here and point to that semantic model that we're working with right there, and I can start asking questions about that model. So instead of building a report just to see that data, I can say, return top 5 states by total sales. And I can hit enter. And the Copilot experience is going to start looking at that data, looking at that semantic model, and just writing the DAX for me and returning those results. And it's a really amazing experience. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people that are going to be watching this after the fact, going through the recording, going through the labs, are going to be working with a Microsoft Fabric free trial in their environment. Right now, today, you cannot do any generative AI or Copilot stuff within Fabric if you're on a free trial. You do need to be on a paid capacity. Now, it only has to be like an F2 capacity. So you can go and provision an F2, tie that to your Microsoft Fabric, and then you can effectively pause it when you're not using it. So it's very cheap to build a proof of concept here and to test this stuff out. But you do have to be on a paid capacity to do what I'm doing right now, which is why we're on a paid capacity.
Good to know. So if someone is following along and they don't see that Copilot icon, that's probably why.
Well, if you don't see the Copilot icon, that's actually because in order to leverage it, you would need to go into your admin portal, go into tenant settings, and there's about 5 or 6 different settings around Copilot that you want to look at and make sure are enabled, both for Fabric data agents as well as standalone Copilot.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Good job. Good questions.
Oh, thanks.
Very good questions.
Good job to you.
We have no scripts. Y'all can see my screen. You can see his screen. We had no scripts. It really was. He's a new guy learning Microsoft Fabric from scratch. And then if you can pop it off of the screen, I'm going to see if there's any questions I can answer maybe real quick here. Here at the end. So, yeah, if your tenant is turned off, you'll have to ask them to turn it on. 100% correct here. There's going to be so many questions, I'm sure I won't be able to get to them. Let's see. Got more questions? Head over to Microsoft Fabric Community. Yeah, the Microsoft Fabric Community is amazing. So if you'll go to this link provided by Adam Saxton here, you can just get so much good information by asking questions, but also seeing what questions have already been asked and answered by other people in the community. So thank you for that. Adam, you are amazing. We appreciate everything you did in the chat window today because I was not able to see it at all because of having to pivot. So thank you for that. And then if you guys do have any questions that I can answer, Pearson@pragmaticworks.com. Please feel free to email me. Love to answer any questions that you have. Thank you again for joining us. Did you have anything else you wanted to add here?
No, this is really insightful and it made me excited to go and dig deeper. So thanks for letting me follow along.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you again to Adam and his team, and we'll see you next time. You can wave now. There you go.